Here is a full tutorial on how I made these Gothic wing edit pictures using Photoshop and PicsArt. So the first thing you want to do is find a new background. You can use honestly just Google Images, Unsplash, iStock, whatever. I actually found a really cool image on iStock just looking up inside elevators because I like this specific industrial post-apocalyptic vibe. So I'm gonna go with this one. Okay, so once you find your image, you can just import it into Photoshop. If you have Photoshop, I know that's not really an accessible tool for everyone. So you can do, I think, a lot of this in PicsArt. It's just kind of a challenge, so I'll do the second half of this video in PicsArt, but for now I will be doing the wing part, at least in Photoshop. So yeah, you just find the picture of yourself that you want to put in here. I'm just using the same one I used for the other edit, slap it in here, and then I used just the Photoshop remove background tool, which honestly isn't great. As you can see, the edges are terrible. So I just kind of go in and adjust the mask accordingly so it looks a little bit better. And it doesn't have to be perfect because I basically go in and I select the edge of my hair like this, and then I use Photoshop's generative AI tool to make it look more natural. And you can't see what I'm typing because it's a different window and the screen recording software didn't pick it up. But I'm basically telling it to just add flyaways, blend it into the background a little bit better, add more hair texture without changing the shape of my head. And you can see here it generates 3 options every time for you to choose from. It took me a while to find one that I like, but you can just keep clicking that generate button until you get one that looks convincing, basically. So I think this is the one I ended up going with. Yeah, here you can see here the before and after. It just looks a little bit more natural and the line isn't as harsh. So yeah. The next thing you want to do is find a pair of wings to use. I just used ones from Pinterest. I think I literally just looked up bird wings and this is the one I used last time. So I'm probably just going to use it again, to be honest, because I already know it blends well with my hair. There's a lot of different wings on a plain white background, which is great. That are real bird wings in all different shapes, sizes, colors. So there's a lot of options to choose from. And then once you find a wing you like, just add it into Photoshop and then use their remove background tool, which if it is on a white background, it's super easy. And then before I put it exactly where I want it, I'm gonna go into the adjustment layers and play around with this, get it to blend better into the background. I'm not going to show this entire process because it's going to be different depending on the image. So now I've moved it to where I actually want it to sit, but I want this hardware to be showing as well. So I'm just going to go in and adjust this mask so you can see that. And then I just kind of do the rest of the mask as well, just kind of clean up that weird, annoying white edge. That's looking much more natural now. So in the pictures I posted, I actually used 2 sets of wings layered on top of each other just because I don't really like how these wings, the feathers on the end are so close together, if that makes sense. So I added another pair to give it more dimension and movement. So I'll show you how I did that as well. So I just went back to Pinterest again to find an image of a wing, and this one is actually still attached to a bird, which you can also do. So I just got rid of the bird and stole this wing and sort of just played around with the warp and distort tool in Photoshop until it sort of blended well with the contours of the wing underneath it. I erased parts of it so it had a more seamless look to it, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I also added some motion blur to this wing to add some movement, and also because it's kind of a low quality image and the motion blur kind of hides some of that. So yeah, and again, I just go in and play around with the adjustment layers to get it to blend to the background and the other wing, which is again dependent on the lighting in your image. But yeah, Okay, and for this next part, I will be doing it in PicsArt just so I'm like having a balance between the two programs because I know a lot of people either don't have Photoshop or aren't super familiar with it. But anyway, yeah, I went back to Pinterest again, as you can see. I looked up medieval swords. I really think that there's a lot of cool, intricate swords from that era that I like to include in my pictures. And a lot of them are like on this sort of black background, which makes it super easy to add in to PicsArt. Okay, so I think these are what I'm going to go with. I probably won't use all of them. But yeah, I also like to incorporate these sort of like abstract random images just to like put in the background. I think they add a lot of cool textures and things like that. Once your image is in PicsArt, you can start adding in like your little elements of design, I guess. If it's on a black background like this, use the lighten blend mode and it will basically remove that black background for you without needing to buy like the pro version of PicsArt to do the background removal. Also, something I forgot to mention is I like to make a duplicate layer of the main layer, so the background and you, and then using the cutout tool, select subject so that you can kind of layer certain design elements either on top of you or behind you. So not everything ends up like covering your face, if that makes sense. So for example, I wanted to add in this like abstract marble paint sort of looking piece. And I definitely want that to be behind me because it's really just going to be there to add some texture and dimension to the background. Also super important, when you're done editing a specific image, make sure you go into the layers and lock it because it's going to be a pain to deal with stuff moving around as you keep adding things. Anyway, next I wanted to add this like little sigil design. As you can see, this one has a white background. So instead I'm going to use the multiply blend layer, which as you can see gets rid of the white background and leaves that black design. So I think the rest of this video is just me adding in other elements from that album I made, playing around with different blend modes, and figuring out, you know, what looks good, what doesn't, and just random placement. So I added in that spider web, this random design, and then this little white sort of sigil thing. Yeah, and then I save it as a JPEG and I get a crazy ad. Oh my God. We're gonna try and move on from that. I then do some like minor edits in like just the Photos app. I'm a big fan of vignettes, so I always add like a black vignette around my photos. And that, but honestly, I kind of like the way this one turned out as is, so there's not really much to do. Yeah, this is the finished result. I kind of like it more than the ones I initially posted, so whoopsies. But anyway, I hope this was helpful. Yeah, thanks for watching.